Hello, Radiant Soul. Welcome to episode 13 of the Devotional Drip, where we are going to be exploring resourcing the wisdom in the cave of your self-care and the chrysalis of your transformation. When to enter the cave, when to emerge from the cave, and how we can best recharge our light so that we can emerge and rise from that space of deep self-connection and higher self-connection. If you're here for the first time, welcome to the Devotional Drip. This is a free weekly higher self-embodiment and personal development coaching series for visionaries, creatives, leaders, and light workers who are ready to ignite their self-connection, embody their higher self-expression, and inspire a more multidimensional self-care practice. So a self-care practice that just is a living, waking, breathing experience across the altars of your personal and professional life so that you can meet the call of your divine purpose embodied in your peace, power, and higher self stewardship. I am a higher self embodiment doula, and it is my life's work to support you in connecting to the light of your higher self through your body, through your breath, so that in any moment you can resource that connection and allow that to be your internal compass. This is much of the theme of many of the episodes of the Devotional Drip. So if this is your flavor, if this is your style, then join us here weekly. And I'm so honored to have you here. Be sure to subscribe, excuse me, to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you can click the alarm bell below so that you can be notified when we go live. So let's talk about the cave. I literally just came out of a cave. I was in like the deepest ritual bath before popping on here. I've still got my rosy cheeks happening, and I'm actually also emerging from leading this epic, super multidimensional 3-day virtual higher self-embodiment boot camp and multidimensional self-care retreat. And it was so epic. And there's so much of the wisdom from this weekend that I want to bring here. So I'm just going to ask Spirit to place the words on my tongue because I am also tired. And we don't have to pretend that we're not tired when we're tired. So my channel is definitely a little more soft today. We're probably going to explore through a lot of metaphor. Not that we don't usually do that, but there's an extra tenderness to the butterfly when it first emerges from the chrysalis. Like, it's got to dry its wings out in the sun. So I'm gonna just dry my little wings out in the sun on the Devotional Drip with you, and we're just getting into a nice, soft, heart-centered energy. The cards that came forward are very much so in the texture, tone, and vibration of the softness and the sweetness and the surrender that's a part of the transformation process and the death and rebirth process. Like, there's a delicacy there, and I'm being guided to really like root this transmission in the delicacy of transformation, and even thinking about how a butterfly's wings are fragile, right? Like, and we get to explore our delicacy and own our softness and own the tenderness of transformation and own the vulnerability, own how vulnerable it is to step into our power at a next level. Like, vulnerability can come, tenderness can come. And in fact, when we bring that along for the ride, the transformation process starts to become sweeter each time because you're sweetening the process, you're honoring the delicacy, and you're creating the conditions. The chrysalis is the conditions that you create for your transformation. So, like, I got on the Devotional Drip an hour later than usual today because I was like, oh, I need to take a bath and put my butterfly clips in my hair, obviously. Like, that's what needs to happen. So that was the chrysalis I created for myself. Those were my boundaries. That was my self stewardship. That was my self leadership. And so I went into the cave so I could emerge, and share my light from a place of resource. And sometimes all we've got is, 30 minutes to an hour to just like shed a layer, ignite our light, and come back to the altar. So I want to empower us in our process of transformation, how often it happens, how change is the only constant. And so I've said this before on an episode of the Devotional Drip. Where can we lean in deeper and trust the process of transformation? And resourcing our light allows us to have a compass in that process. So we know where we're going. And when we do find ourselves in the devolve, when we do find ourselves in the cave, we're not judging that process. We're honoring that death. We're honoring that darkness as a necessary part of resourcing a deeper connection to our light. And then we can surrender deeper into that rhythm and really trust the process and find pleasure in it, find the blessings in the lessons. No longer do we need to only suffer for our transformation and for our ascension and for our sovereignty and for our embodiment. We can choose to grow from a place of self-empowerment. And when we do that, we acknowledge the very real suffering that exists on this planet. And through our power, through our practice of embodying our primordial peace and power, we choose to not recreate that suffering in relationship to ourselves, so that we can remove our energetic imprint from the collective field. And through shifting our own relationship with our suffering, which can come up a lot in the process of transformation, through shifting that relationship, we as part of the larger collective shift that imprint. And, there's 6 of us live here together right now. If we all made that devotion in this moment and in this breath, like, that's so powerful. First of all, like, hello, pentagram. And anyone who is, I'm feeling so deeply that specifically this transmission and like this moment, everyone who is here right now is a leader. The people who are going to tune into this replay are also leaders. And this is specifically an investigation of how we can meet this process as leaders, knowing that there are many altars to tend to, including the altar of our own heart. Like, that is every time, that is where we need to return to. We need to return to our own light, because that's where all of the other altars get watered from. And when we feel that sense of depletion, that's actually when it's time to return to the cave, so that we're not reacting from exhaustion and being under resourced. We're noticing, oh, wow, as a steward and leader of my own heart right now, I need to recharge. And this isn't like a every new moon and every full moon thing. Like, this isn't even a once a week thing. This isn't even a once a day thing. This is like do I need to take 5 minutes to 15 minutes, 2 minutes, 60 seconds to retreat into the cave, connect to my light, so that I can come out more resourced? And how do we fill our resources up quickest? Through our breath, through coming into stillness, through trusting the darkness of our hands, palming our eyes, and taking a breath and letting the front brain cool off, so that the mind remembers that it's here to be in service to the heart, not the other way around. So I haven't even pulled up my notes yet for today. That was just a organic channel pouring through. Let me adjust my screen here so I can get my notes up. I'm using a new computer. I'm using my husband's computer, because my computer said, girlfriend, we're done. If anyone has a computer they've really been enjoying, let me know. I use a lot of Adobe software. So I'm on Lightroom and Photoshop a lot, and I have huge files. Also Premiere. I've got like huge files all over my computer. So if there's any tech witches in the building, on the replay or live here right now, and you have a favorite computer, let me know because I am currently shopping for one. Thank you, Coven. Okay, so we're going to start. I've got 3 oracle cards for today. We're going to start with um, our dear friend Amaterasu. Amaterasu is a solar goddess of Japanese mythology. Her name means shining in heaven. Hello. I know I've pulled this card before for a few of you that are here live, so we'll see what she has to say today. So Amaterasu's long story short is that she got in a fight with her brother Susanoo, who's the god of the storms and the sea, and his violence made her so angry that she retreated into a cave, leaving the world in darkness. And the kami, or the spirits of merriment or joy, placed a mirror outside of her cave and laughed so much that Amaterasu actually became curious and was like, "What's all this joy?" Peeked out and saw a beautiful vision of a goddess shining in the light of dawn. And she wasn't even aware that it was her own reflection. The spirits had placed this mirror, so she was stepping out and seeing herself shining in the sun after being in the cave. And surrounded by laughter, and surrounded by the celebration of her guides and recognizing her own higher self identity. We could say she was in a moment of deep self revelation at like a root to crown chakra level. It's like, I am the I am that I am. I know who I am. This is who I am. I'm seeing who I am. And this is happening after the retreat in the cave, the retreat in the chrysalis. So she was surrounded by laughter. She was able to see her own divine reflection mirrored back to her, and this lifted this dense energy, this old self that had attached, that was ready to drop away from her field. But sometimes we need the cave. Sometimes we need the chrysalis. If we've worked together before, you've heard me reference in the chrysalis, we can resource the sovereignty of the slop, the nothingness that we become and just dissolve into in those cave moments where it's really dark. Maybe we feel like we have all these swords in our back and in our heart and in our throat. It can be also just a liminal space. It doesn't even need to feel necessarily violent. It can also just be like a deep sadness, and sort of like this cloak. I'm seeing this like cloak of gray just like over the creature. And when we go into the darkness and we surrender, I'm seeing the way that the body relaxes and the bones rest on the earth. And so that outer shell can just dissolve, and we can emerge from that space. So, surrounded by laughter, her feelings of anger and this deep sadness lifted, and she agreed to leave the cave, bringing her light back with her into the world. But where did she resource and remember her light? She remembered her light from the cave. And that's a whole lot of what we did in Journey and Download this weekend. We did yoga nidra, we did breath work, we laid on the ground a lot. And then we also danced, we also disarmed, we also completed cycles in the nervous system that needed to come to closure through somatic movement, through our breath. And we can decomplicate these things. Breath work is breathing. And dancing is moving. So we can breathe and we can move, and we can do that in whatever way serves us. And we know how to do this. We're just remembering. We're just remembering after being traumatized, perhaps, out of our bodies, out of our breaths, out of our power. So if you've been making self-care complicated recently, something I'll find a pattern that my husband and I will get into is like thinking we need so much time to go do the thing, or he'll be like, I need 3 hours to go on this run. And I'll be like, I need 2 hours of a yoga practice. And like, for sure, 100%, those things are delicious. But the sustainability piece is like, oh, I have 5 minutes right now. I'm going to drop into a calming breath pattern. For 5 minutes, I'm going to inhale through both of my nostrils for 4 counts, and I'm going to exhale for 4 counts. And for the next 5 minutes, that's all I'm going to do. That's all that has my attention and my awareness. I am in the cave. I'm letting go of the need to plan, to know, to be ready for what's next because, oh, I need to resource right now. So I'm not going to make this decision from a place of charge, overwhelm, or fragmentation. If I can take the 60 seconds to the 5 minutes to the 20 minutes, I'm going to create that space. Ash says, this really resonates. I feel this energy come in of desperateness or fear when I'm depleted. And sometimes this gets so nuanced. I'm trying to learn to be more sensitive to it. Totally, Ash. I deeply feel that. I notice mine is like, I get grumpy. I get grumpy and I get cranky. And my inner child is like, God damn, can we just like celebrate for a moment and stop working on things? Like, let's just drop it and let's resource the power of celebration. And can the power of celebration be a breath? Can we remember the gift of these simple things that don't cost a lot of money, don't cost any money, don't cost a bunch of our time. It's just the intention and the awareness that even if we don't have the 5 minutes outside of interacting with other beings, as we're speaking, are we breathing? I used to not breathe while talking. Like, of course, I was like kind of breathing, but like when I started to let the multidimensionality of my lungs and my rib cage and my being start to take up space and expand, my breath showed me where I was shrinking myself within my life as well. The breath and the body are such powerful teachers, and they will show us where we're pushing, where we're forcing, where we're rushing, where we're fixing versus feeling. And this weekend in Journey and Download, we really practice being the living sculpture. What is it to be the living sculpture and let the breath sculpt our next move and let the light from our heart be the current that's directing the power of our awareness. Okay, so surrounded by the light and laughter and her feelings of anger and depression and sadness lifted, and Amaterasu agreed to leave the cave, bringing her light back with her into the world. So then I pulled the crocodile. And the crocodile says that the cave is crucial. Submerging, resting, and collecting energy and cooling off. We could say down regulating. We could say resourcing. We could say sometimes the word regulate feels a little like hyper masculine to me. My teacher, Nina, my yoga teacher, Nina, offers titration to titrate the nervous system with the breath. I think that's so beautiful. That like connects me to like the oceanic wisdom of the body and the breath and the water versus like, I got to regulate myself. I'm like, nobody regulate me or tell me what the fuck to do ever again. I just want to titrate, shimmy, shake this little nervous system into a place of pleasure and power, you know? So the crocodile coming through to validate Amaterasu's journey in the cave, validate how important that period of cave and chrysalis is. However many times a day, a week, an hour, we need to resource that. Sometimes if I'm working on something really high sensation, it's like every 10 to 20 minutes, I have to like stop and spend 60 seconds just breathing so that I can move through that mountain in consciousness or whatever that thing in my body that's been resonating as a block, a wall, you shall not pass. So the breath becomes the tool to move through the portal. The cave becomes the medicine and the space between the block and entering the new portal. It's again that liminal space, and it can feel like a heavy space. It can feel like an agitated space. It can feel like a grumpy space. It can feel like a the world is just so and everything's just so. And how valid are those feelings? Hello? How valid are those feelings? So when we give ourselves the resource of the cave, then we don't have to judge that. And it's just like, you know, today I was like, there's no way in hell I'm getting on at noon today. I want to put butterflies in my hair and take a bath. And have an orgasm like before I get on YouTube. That's just my non-negotiables. So that was my cave today. And I feel so much more vibrant than I did just even an hour and a half ago. So, all right, the cave is crucial. The crocodile is reminding us that resting, submerging, collecting energy, dissolving into the sovereignty of slop, and cooling off so that we can emerge from our wisdom. We get wisdom in the cave. Shadow work, work in the darkness, light work, shining light into the dark. These are all just semantics to describe the experience of alchemy and to reclaim the wisdom that the transformation happens in the dark. And so if that is true, and that doesn't mean that we're not surrounded by people and we don't let people in and we're just all by ourselves. We need team around us. We're not actually meant to go through it alone. Amaterasu was never in the cave alone. Amaterasu had her higher self. Amaterasu's guides were outside of the cave. You could invite people into the cave and sit around the fire together and call that the coven, right? So it's not about isolating, but it is about claiming our right to create that cave-like space for ourselves. Drawing inward and hiding our light is what this card says, but hiding doesn't really resonate. Drawing inward and calling, it's like calling the fluid organism back to the spine, calling your energy back from all time and space to restore, to capital S source yourself, to plug back into the light through the darkness. And think about like even your eyes being closed and being in breath work, or just even laying on the floor and taking 10 breaths in and out, 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Do that 10 times. You'll start to hear the oceanic nature of your internal being, and the water will start to talk. And it might take time for the being to settle, but it's through that space of the waves of our consciousness floating back and forth that we start to find our current again. And it's like, oh, right, I have the right to choose what current I'm surfing and where I'm going. It's actually very interesting that the cave is coming up with the crocodile and Amaterasu, because the journey that we did for Journey and Download this weekend, on Friday, we did a yoga nidra practice, and then we went into a deep meditative breathwork and visualization journey. And we actually started in the cave. And our higher self came through as a snake animal guide, that belly to the ground wisdom, that root chakra in the darkness, in the very center of the body, the base of the spine, like where that power center begins of our major 7 chakra column. There's 114 chakras in the body, 72,000 nadis, but this main 7 column, from that base, from that earth, from that darkness, from that underground, is where we begin the journey. So the crocodile is reminding us, Amaterasu is reminding us. Those of you that were a part of Journey and Download this weekend, if you haven't taken a moment to celebrate yourself for your willingness to go into the cave. We went into the cave a whole lot. There was many invitations into that space, and there's a deep level of devotion, surrender, and willingness that's required in order to do that. So if you haven't given yourself a little pat on the back, we did a lot of somatic holding this weekend. My coach Des taught me this: under the armpit and then on the arm, a nice little somatic hold. If you haven't given yourself a little hug, a little hold, then give yourself that gift. And even if you weren't with us this weekend, think about where you've been going. What mountains have you been climbing? Where has your journey taken you? Have you taken a moment to celebrate yourself? Have you taken a moment to give yourself the gift of your own self-attention and just a good job? It doesn't even have to be a monologue. It can just be like a good job, insert name that you like to call yourself. Okay. So drawing inward and hiding our light, resourcing our light to restore ourselves, or to heal from something or someone that felt too intense or aggressive or agitating in our systems, is the wisdom of the crocodile. And to be in our responsiveness and our resourcefulness is to also know when something has really triggered something for us. and that we are activated and that we are charged up, and that it is perhaps righteous. Maybe there's an invitation to own the sacredness of that rage, the sacredness of that reaction in the system. It's not that we don't want to talk shit about the reaction, because the reaction is also the wisdom. But when we respond from reaction, or when we meet what's in front of us from reaction, especially when it's something outside of us, um, we're not resourced as much as we could be. So it's not like we don't need to be good. This is not about being good. It's not about doing it right. It's about creating a more pleasurable experience for ourselves and therefore all beings. And when we're not in our reactivity, we can be in our creativity because we're resourced in the chrysalis. The butterfly is such a creative creature. But think about the time that it takes to go into the chrysalis, to cool off, to submerge so it can emerge. Literally, all of these cards have the word submerge, emerge, and cave in them. It is quite, I mean, I love a good synchronicity, but wow, this is quite the weave, even for me. So, I love this. The crocodile also says that wait is a mantra. Oh, wait is a mantra. What a gift for a hyperactive nervous system. As someone who lived in fight or flight for many years, I didn't know that wait was an option. I didn't know that pause, that stop, that breath was an option. So, wait is a mantra. And weight comes through, and the crocodile comes through to remind us that we always have the sovereign right to intentionally withdraw, gather our awareness, observe, and build our internal resources through breath, through rest, through that titration, through connecting to the oceanic being, through movement, through breath, through journaling, through whatever brings you power and pleasure and refuge. What's your refuge? Where do you go to recharge? That's what this crocodile is pointing us to. It's saying, wait is a mantra. Go resource yourself, then return to what's in front of you. If it's been heavy, if it's been dense and dark, Amaterasu reminds us that it's the levity of joy and laughter that creates the spaciousness so that we can then choose a different thought. Feeling thought, shift the emotion, shift the thought. Go into the cave to shift the emotion, not to fix the emotion, not to analyze the emotion, to feel the feeling, to resource the wisdom, to plug back in and remember who you are, to then respond to your life. That's the formula that wants to come through today. We can do this every day, 3 times a day, as many times a day, or an hour that we need to, and we always have the right to press this pause button. And in fact, when we work towards building our internal resources every day, over time, a new level of resourcefulness and resilience is built in the system, because of the connection that's been created through the mind and the body and the spirit, for that matter. And the way that the nervous system is also a living creature. It's also a sculpture, and it's also shifting and being imprinted. And so we can shift the imprints, and we can work with the imprints, and the imprints in our nervous system, which will show up in our reactivity, which will show up in our breath, which will show up in our habits, which will show up in our thoughts, which will show up in our self-identities, which will show up in our self-concepts. We can decide that this is our assignment on our altar, and we can svadhyaya, which is a niyama from the 5 yamas and 5 niyamas of yoga as a part of the 8 limbs of yoga. We can resource svadhyaya, which means self-study. And like I don't want to say scientist in the lab because that feels really clinical. I'm going to resource pillar 3 of the 7 pillars of higher self-embodiment, which is a multidimensional higher self-care system that we worked with this weekend in Journey and Download. We can resource our capacity to witness, and not analyze, but lovingly observe. Where are the spikes in the system, in the reactivity? What comes up over and over again? And how do we disrupt a pattern that's really old and ancient? First, we have to observe it with non judgment. If you observe it with judgment, it's not going to reveal itself to you. It's like if you were looking at another person and you were like, show me yourself. But there wasn't like kindness and tenderness or consent. Like we need to resource consent even with our own hearts, right? And we need to tell ourselves like, hey, like this is a non-judgmental space. Like you're safe. There's compassion. Like let me create this container, this chrysalis, this cave space, inner being, for you to tell me what's up, inner child, inner teenager, self-concept or identity that happens to be deeply triggered in this moment because of the collective trauma we've been living through for the last 2 years and many years before that. So to do that is to not bypass what's happening on the planet. To care for yourself is to actually really acknowledge the level of intensity in the collective field and then decide to be a pillar of peace. Because what chips away at our resilience? What chips away at our resource? Trauma. And trauma is everywhere all the time. Little t trauma, big T trauma, in the body, in the field, in the collective. So we don't have to pretend that that doesn't exist anymore. And we can understand that reoccurring traumatic patterns are going to chip away at our resilience. And so if it's a heightened moment of collective trauma, then the cave is going to become even more important. And if there's a lot being triggered for you right now, or you're feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated, please know that the crocodile is here to say that you have the right to embody this energy. The crocodile in balance says that it's a silent powerhouse. And when out of balance, it feels stuck and lashes out. You always have the right to go into the cave like Amaterasu and charge your light and trust that your guides have got you. They're outside the cave and your higher self is always with you in the cave, and you can invite your peeps to be like, hey, y'all, I'm in the cave. The people in my inner circle always know when I'm in the cave and in the chrysalis, because chances are I'm not really responding to text messages. I'm not as available, and that's okay. We don't have to be available for everything, everywhere, all the time. We are cyclical beings. We are divorcing ourselves from this patriarchal, masculine, whatever the fuck, that's like, this is the way a human should be and needs to be, and this is the way that life needs to look. It's like, no, we're back in the water consciousness. We're back in the flow. We're in the spiral. We're in the spiralic consciousness. We're in the continuation. We're in the death and the birth that's happening perhaps rapidly for you in your field right now. And it's not just like winter is the cave and in spring we emerge. Like, of course, there's that energy with the seasons, but then we also have these cycles within our bodies and within our systems. And that's happening all of the time. So maybe every morning you emerge and every night you go into the chrysalis, or maybe you wake up in the morning and you feel like you are just coming out of that chrysalis and your wings are still wet. I know that to be true for me. I'm very sensitive in the morning and can be very grumpy if I don't like immediately tap into the ritual. It's like a parent for their child. I just know I got to put the music on. The incense has to be burning. I need to put something on my body that makes me feel safe and held, and I want to make my morning beverage. And before I connect with anything or anyone else, unless it's the living creatures in my house who I'm also taking care of, but I mean like outside world social media, like it's me and me. Because if we're in that tender wing state and then we enter another field, like there's so much permeability. There's so much innocence. And we want to be stewards for our own innocence, for our own consciousness, especially as if you're a highly sensitive person and you really feel a lot and you feel a lot around. It becomes even more important to understand this is me and this is not me. And what's not me is commanded to leave my field. not because I'm going to separate myself from everything else, but because I understand I'm so deeply connected to everything that I'm going to stand in my own light and sovereignty first. So that's my compass. So all day I'm tuning back into that light, coming back into the cave, taking a breath, re-emerging. Okay, there I am. Okay, back into the cave. Okay, here we are. And as many times a day as we need to, we can do that. Um, the cave is where the transformation takes place, in the dark womb of nothingness, in the sorrow, in the sweetness of surrender, in the putting down what is too heavy for us to hold alone, and resource the support in the field from the 3D level of like, I need to drink some water, go to the bathroom and lay on the ground for 5 minutes and like phone a friend and let them know what's up so I don't feel alone in this, to the like 4D, okay, now I am resourcing the consciousness of my higher self. I'm calling in my interdimensional guides, to the 5D. Okay, there's the revelation. And there I am. Oh, right, I'm multidimensional. I can resource downloads. I can go to my Oracle deck and pull a card um and have stewardship over the feeling tone that I'm holding in my body. Then when we're ready, we can activate our curiosity as a pathway to presence and gratitude and celebration and revelation and compassion and newfound understanding. That's that 5D. That's that like, okay, I took care of the 3D, very real stuff here. I started to walk the bridge over and remember I'm fully human and fully divine. And now I can resource the power of my curiosity. I can be curious. I can be in my witness state. And this now becomes my pathway to presence, to being able to have gratitude for the glass of water or whatever it is, for the celebration of like, wow, I actually crossed 2 things off my to-do list. And that's a big deal. I have to have an Asana board, something in my Google Calendar, and also a whiteboard so that I can on my computer and then like in my physical space see that things have been physically crossed off the master get to-do list. Because here's the truth, it's not ending. Mystery School of Life, class is always in session. So we can create the cave as an option for ourselves so that when we do feel overstimulated and overwhelmed by the very real intensity of this world, we know that we have an option. We don't feel optionless. I'm just going to tap into the comments. Post oh glow, yes. Pisces vibes, yes. Super Pisces vibes. My Venus is in Pisces too, so I love to speak in like Pisces language. I feel like my throat gets so activated in Pisces season. Consent with our own hearts. This. Yes, consent with our own hearts. Creating consent and a space for justice to take place between ourselves and ourselves. What reconciliation needs to take place? What forgiveness needs to take place? When I feel shame, the cave is an oasis. There's a pool I can dip my toes in. There's a coolness and safety I can indulge in. Yes. And shame is hot. Shame is hot. It's hot in the system and it's a program. Shame is not a natural human emotion. Like humans don't just like endogenously feel shame. It's been so programmed and distilled into the matrix of our consciousness, that water of the cave, symbolically and quite literally, can bring us back to our center, and then we can harness the fire and we can direct the fire and we can use the fire. Because if shame is coming up in relationship to our self-concept and self-identity, that's big solar plexus energy. The block and the portal in the solar plexus, functioning as a portal at the same time, because it's never actually really a block, right? It's just what we're feeling as a block, is shame. And what we can do in that space is resource the power of our own self-permission, to retreat inside, to know that that is so valid. Okay, back to my little notes, and we're gonna bring this into we're gonna tie this in a bow. Not that it needs to be neat and tidy, but I want to weave the web and bring it in, close the portal, if you will. So once we get curious and resource this newfound compassion and understanding through retreating into the cave, we can then decide through our curiosity about our own light and what's possible now that I've recharged, how can I meet my life from a different perspective? Um, so that we can then feel our light for ourselves, but also bring that out into the world. Because if you identify as a light worker, as someone who is spreading light, or a shadow integrator, or a leader, or a visionary, or a creative, what if you are someone who's bringing offerings to the collective field from your creative light? um, if you're that archetype and you don't share that light with the world, there's this feeling of underexpression that I've witnessed in myself and with my clients, um, that can be actually physically painful. Like, underexpression can feel physically painful. And often that underexpression is shrouded in that shame. We can get stuck in that third chakra. We can get stuck in the solar plexus. And then we're not making it up to the heart. We're not making it to the well where we can drink. So if we can resource that self permission to shine our light, um, that also is going to then shower it back on us. Like, when we share our light, we also get fed by our light. It's not like, oh, I'm giving, 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 and I'm not receiving. To give is to receive. To die is to be reborn. It happens together. They work in tandem. We're in the spiral, we're in the circle, we're in the waves, we're in the ocean. The waves that crash into each other and create the new patterns and the spirals and the circles. So if we've been in the cave too long, Amaterasu is also inviting us back out into the light. Because if we're feeling like too pregnant with downloads, too pregnant with our own light, it can feel also heavy in the body. Like, oh, actually, it's time to share. Oh, actually, it is time to emerge. So give yourself time in the cave. To give yourself time in the cave is to understand that at some point, as my coach Des says, action is going to be the spell to emerge. Action becomes the spell, and it's a choice. Amaterasu was curious, and then she made the choice to go seek what was seeking and calling out to her. And the beauty of this is that she emerges from the cave out of curiosity, attracted to someone else's joy, attracted to the joy of these spirits that had been outside the cave, putting the mirror out so she could see herself. And that's when she meets the dawn of her own reflection. So if you have been in a space of isolation, where can you create some space for community? And that gets to look different for each of us. We all get to reclaim, like, what do I want my relationship to community to be? How do I want to bring that into my life? She doesn't truly see her own light until she's drawn out of herself. And once she sees her own light, she becomes curious about seeing the light that's around her in the levity and the laughter of these other deities. So, from a place of recognizing her own light, she's now curious about the light in other beings. The third card that I pulled from my Magdalene deck is the Universal Christ card, which is also Universal Buddha Consciousness card, Universal Christ Consciousness card, Universal Divine Love Consciousness card. You can use whatever language resonates for you. Um, so, so, so through becoming interested in her own divine nature and her own light, she's then able to connect the light in other beings, and vice versa. Through becoming curious about other beings' lights, other beings' light, and how lit up they are, versus, like, she didn't have to be curious. She could be jealous. She could judge it. She could be like, why are you throwing a party? Like, it's so dark right now. What are you doing? But she was curious about that light, and that sparked her own light. So then she could share that light. So use what is around you. Maybe it's your animals, maybe it's your plants, maybe it's human beings and relationships you have in your light. Let the light around you, let the tree in your front yard or your backyard, if you're lucky enough to have a tree, let connecting to the light within creation remind you of your own light. And then through connecting to your own light, watch how you then connect differently to the light of creation. um okay, I'm going to read the Universal Christ card, and that's going to be our closing. Then I'm going to introduce the movement prompts and the journal prompts. Okay. The emptiness you presently feel is helping you reconnect to aspects of your nature that you have kept repressed for some time. Let go of all distractions that surround you at present and bring your awareness within. In the empty spaces of your solitude, you will find a hidden treasure. This is a period of profound self-discovery. You need only listen to the whispers inside your heart. You need only listen to the whispers inside your heart. You are the master. You are the teacher. Ask yourself what it is you truly want from life, and remember that when it comes to matters of the heart, there's no right or wrong. Every choice you make leads to an outcome which is necessary for you to grow in love and wisdom. You will emerge from this phase with a clearer direction for your life. As a result of this, some of your relationships are likely to go through major changes. Relationships that no longer serve you may come to an end, while others become stronger and more meaningful. Trust the inner guidance you receive. In the cave, be like the crocodile. Be like our friend Amaterasu. Know that this exists within inside of you and every being, this light, all beings, no matter if they know that, if they're consciously aware of that or not aware of it. We can relate to all beings, light to light, higher self to higher self. And in fact, I personally believe like that's the recipe right now. That's the recipe for a high charge, high sensation, high trigger, high overwhelm, high activation moment is 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 no matter what to relate divine self to divine self. And and Sekhmet, the goddess of sacred rage, even teaches us that in our anger we can do that. In our anger is our wisdom to bring us to the altar of our own hearts, to allow what outrages us to exist and be alive so that we can understand from our higher self perspective, what do I want to do with this? And how do we understand it? We get curious. We get curious. We go into the cave so we can see and resource the light. And that is episode 13 of the Devotional Drip, my dears. Thank you for those who tuned in live, and many blessings to those on the replay as well. Feel free to drop in the comments and let me know what the vibe was. I do also actually want to give you the movement prompts and journal prompts real quick. Let me actually do that. So I'm going to put this on the blog. This will go out the replay, but movement prompts: create a cave and rest. Makarasana is the asana that the crocodile suggested. If this is from the crocodile card, is from the Animal Spirit Guidebook by Kim Kranz. And this is an asana where you put your palms together like this, you lay on your belly, and then you place them at the third eye, and you have your belly on the ground and you're breathing in and out, and it's allowing you feeling into your in breath and your out breath. You'll notice those patterns in the nervous system we were talking about, because you'll be able to feel it in your diaphragm, and that strong breathing in and out as you're on the ground and as your hands are on your forehead. So you have a little space for your nose and your mouth here, so you can inhale and exhale through your nose. Through doing that, you'll actually tonify the diaphragm, and it's a deep restorative nervous system titrating asana. So it's belly to the ground, hands on the forehead, little crocodile with its belly to the ground, and just try 10 breaths there. So this first somatic movement prompt is create a cave and rest. So that's an asana that you can use. You can also do child's pose. Even just let yourself roll around on the floor for a while and find what feels stuck and tight. Do a cave dance. How would you want to dance in your cave? And then do a dance to come out of the cave. What would your dance out of the cave look like? And then do a dance embodying the light of your higher self while lovingly eye gazing in the mirror. So this is that moment for Amaterasu, looking in the mirror, shining that light, and doing that dance of like higher self revelation. So those are your movement prompts, and you'll get a new practice playlist for March that will go out with the replay as well. So join the newsletter if you have not, linked in the description. That will go out shortly. And if you catch this video later, look up the name of the video on the Blood, Bone, and Honey blog. If you go to bloodboneandhoney.com, you go to the blog and you type in the name of the title of this video, it will take you to the corresponding blog post. So if you catch this later, you're not going to get the newsletter with the replay, obviously, because it's going to be later in time. So know that you can do that. You can do that for any of the episodes of the Devotional Drip. And then our journal prompts. What has the cave taught me? If you've been in the cave, what does the cave have to teach me if you need to go into the cave? What have I been considering or curious about doing or starting that I can take action around as a devotion and spell to come out of the cave? Where can I notice, celebrate, and focus on more light in my life within creation? What brings me joy and what makes me laugh? Answer these questions for yourself, and I promise that you will find a well of resource and you will come out with wisdom. Sometimes the most simple inquiry, like what brings me joy and what makes me laugh, and infusing that more regularly can also create that cave-like energy in our life, where it becomes our container, and we know that we're going to get resourced, we're going to get recharged. The being's not in scarcity, wondering when the next time they're going to get to drink from the well is going to be because they're so dehydrated. We create this reliability with ourselves, going back to the consent piece, the trust with ourselves. So yeah, that's our drip for today, y'all. Subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll see y'all on the gram. All the blessings to my journey and download honeys that I see are here for your integration process. Be so gentle with yourself. Your wings are wet. Let yourself bask and bathe in the sun, that big cat energy. Bring that into your week. And thank you for all of you who tuned in live on the replay. Much love, beautiful. Thank you. You're so welcome, Rebecca. Such a beautiful session. Many blessings of gratitude. You're so welcome, Jenna. Big love, Alexis. I see you here. And I will see you guys next week. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye.